welcome to another episode of The Music Corner. Today we're going to be talking about Grizzly Bear, one of my favorite bands. Now, about 12 years ago, I got to see them perform live at the Greek Theater. I was still living in LA at the time, and they had just released their album Shields, which is probably best known for the songs Yet Again and Speaking Rounds, and the last track, The Sun Is In Your Eyes. It's a great album, but it's not my favorite, and I'll get to why I don't personally have a Grizzly Bear favorite album in just a couple minutes. But first I'll tell a quick story. So my buddy and I were lucky enough to get tickets last minute. I think they were like $35 each, and decent seats. And the Greek Theater, if you've never been there, I highly recommend. It's an awesome place to go see a show. The acoustics are great. It's a small amphitheater, so it's not nearly as big as the Hollywood Bowl or other bigger types of arenas and stuff like that. But it is pretty big. So getting tickets isn't too difficult, and you can get pretty cheap tickets and reasonably good seats. It's not like, nosebleeds in the far back, like at the Bowl. So anyway, we go, we have a great time, and I realized it had been like 6 or so years since Grizzly Bear kind of first came onto the scene. I was about like 15 or 16, I think, and I remember distinctively being in a room. I was in this small room volunteering for this organization that was like connected somehow to a hospital, to Cedars-Sinai, and I volunteered there for about a year. Anyway, we're like 3 or 4 teenagers, and then it was like 3 or 4 adults who were clinicians, or they were in graduate school, or they were on their way to become licensed clinicians in psychology. And I remember one of the guys, I think his name was Dustin, sweet guy, he's looking through this magazine. As usual, we had like, a bunch of downtime, and he's browsing, and he looks up and he's like, "Hey, have you heard of this band, Grizzly Bear?" And my first thought, being the cynical know-it-all teenager that I was Grizzly Bear? Oy vey. Like, another band that wants to like call themselves some cool sounding name, and then their music sounds like garbage. And I kind of dismissed what Dustin was saying, but I was like, oh, interesting. Like, yeah, a new band. Okay, cool. At the time, I was probably still listening to a little bit of Blink-182, a lot of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Incubus. I was very rebellious. Anyways, my first thought is, Grizzly Bear, what do I care? And then, of course, fast forward, I'm in my first year of college, and the song 2 Weeks is inescapable off the album The Catamist. It was like, I would just hear it. I'd go into like an on-campus food court, like dining hall or cafe, and immediately I'm met with the audio of 2 Weeks, which is definitely a great song. Again, it's not one of my favorites. So why do I have the specific quote behind me that I have? Well, it's from the opening track called Wasted Acres off of, I believe it's still their most recent album from 2017, called Painted Ruins, which is a beautiful album. The artwork is great, and again, they just nail it. What I love about it's a love-hate relationship, but this is a good thing. It's a good thing to, I suppose, it's a healthy resentment, we'll put it that way. It's, Grizzly Bear is one of these bands that they're so creative with what it is that they write, and so for them, they take their time. They're not interested in releasing 1 or 2 albums every 3 or 4 years. If it takes 6 years or 7, whatever, like however long it takes to do what's necessary to be as in touch with the creative process as possible, which is why Painted Ruins is, again, I don't have a favorite, but it's one of my favorites of all of their albums, because you can tell that the energy, the time, you can feel, as someone put it in an article from a music magazine years ago, the artist's body and their process and their bodily, physical process engaging in the creative endeavors of music, which to me is the best thing that we have. And it's sad because what I love about things like electronic music is when it incorporates stuff from what we call like the analog world, but doesn't digitalize, if that's a word, to coin a word, I guess, but doesn't digitize or make it so fake sounding that you lose track of the fact that there was a human being actually behind that creative process to begin with. And I'll just say real quick what my favorite song off of Painted Ruins is, because yeah, I do have a favorite, and it's Systole, but Glass Hillside is a close one. The Glass Hillside is, I think it's probably the best song on the album for a number of reasons, one of which is the chord progression changes are absolutely genius. It's not something that, again, I don't categorize what Grizzly Bear is doing. I wouldn't call them a rock band. If anything, they'd be considered progressive rock. I think they could fall into that category. Probably another video for another time. But the reason I love Glass Hillside, but it's not my favorite, is because it is very mystical. They have that quality about them, Grizzly Bear does, such a mystical type of energy to their music. And that's one of my favorite qualities in any sort of music. You know, Sting, the famous Sting, said in an interview with the also famous Mr. Rick Beato, you know, if music doesn't, in the first 30 seconds to, let's say, 1 minute of the track, if it doesn't surprise me, if it doesn't lead me to wanting more or to being in this questioning mode of, oh, what was the artist thinking when they went that way, right, in that direction? If that's not happening, Sting shuts it off. And for good reason. I would too. And that is what I do mainly, because I'm not interested in something that doesn't move me. But more importantly, I'm not interested in something that isn't moving me and also isn't creating some mystery or a question in my mind that's saying, oh, what's going on here, right? And Grizzly Bear, for all the good things that they do and accomplish, I think they absolutely will provoke such a response in the listener. It's just what they do. And so I do hope I get to see them perform live again at some point. I'm curious to see what they come up with next. Painted Ruins already, they came out about 7 years ago, I think. And yeah, as far to my knowledge, they haven't released a full length since then, and that's, you know, held up. I think every album they release it's no better or worse than the next. It's creative, it's different, and it embodies ultimately Grizzly Bear. So anyways, give Systole a listen. That's I think it's the second to last, or one of the closing tracks before the very last track of the album Painted Ruins. You can't really describe why you have a favorite, you know, it's just, for me, it's memories, and Systole brings back a lot of memories, particularly around the time I was listening to it. But I think above and beyond all of that is just the feeling it gives me when I listen to it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will, as always, see you on the next one.